Awesome. So today what we're going to be talking about is growing your business with social media in 2021. So what we're going to kind of cover here today is we're going to be kind of talking about obviously the different social media platforms, but we're going to be talking about, okay, how do we find our voice? Obviously, there's a lot of social media platforms out there. We want to talk about how to utilize them, but we also want to understand how do we, again, the different trends that are out there for 2021 and what we're seeing kind of ongoing, the different techniques, just even the different platforms that are going to be available to us. Today, what we're going to mainly be, what we're going to be mainly focusing on is going to be Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn as kind of the top four, again, main social media platforms out there. Obviously, yes, there are other social media platforms out there that you can utilize, but we're going to spend our most amount of time on those four because most likely if you're kind of getting started or you're kind of doing this, and for most businesses, one of those four or potentially all four of those are going to be a great way to start to kind of help grow your business here in 2021 and obviously into the future from there. Okay, so first things is understanding utilizing social media. So these are just some things to kind of think about no matter what type of platform you're on, even some, if you're on some platforms that we're not going to talk about here today, these are really just some things to kind of remember about the overarching kind of umbrella of social media. So the first thing is remember, every time that you're posting, you want to present yourself as an industry expert that people want to engage with. And what we're kind of talking about there is that when someone thinks of your product, your service, or your industry, you want them to think of you. You want them to think of you because you have cemented yourself as that expert, because you've been a resource for them. You've given them information. You've proven with different posts and different content and different things that you've built that you know what you're talking about. You also can do this by being personable. That's obviously one of the huge things that we can do with social media that you're going to see kind of throughout the presentation as well, is it kind of can humanize our brand. Obviously people love working with companies that can solve their issues, but people love working with companies that can solve their issues that they can have a personal connection with and kind of have that human kind of component to it. And when we're talking about being a resource, there's a couple things to kind of, again, think about. The first is we kind of want to adapt a give, ask philosophy. What we're talking about here is you essentially, again, for every 3 posts or 2 to 1, you want to just kind of be giving someone something, meaning that you don't want to be, again, asking for, hey, purchase this, buy this. No one likes to be sold, just usually in general, but especially on social media. So we have to be cognizant of how we're kind of conducting that. And when you're developing your social media strategy, you want to try to adopt a give, ask. Now you might be asking yourself, well, Ben, what would something potentially be that's giving and what's something that might be potentially asking? And this kind of even goes into the point there of being a resource to your followers and potential followers. Again, you've heard me say the word resource a couple times now. And the reason I use that word is it's not just saying, hey, we're, again, a platform here that we're just going to tell you all about our products and services. No, we're going to be a resource, meaning that we're going to give you some tips and tricks. So hypothetically, maybe you are an auto, mechanic. Maybe you give people a top 10 things that they can look on their car themselves. Maybe you're talking about some industry news that's happening. Things that are interesting that aren't really saying, hey, buy from me. And an ask, for instance, would be a piece of content that maybe you do say, hey, for Father's Day, we're having a sale here for the rest of the month, or, again, on Father's Day. So again, one of them is going to be more or less talking about your industry or something that might be useful to someone or entertaining. And that's another kind of component is potentially it's a joke, potentially it's a meme. There's something there that's related to your business though, some way, somehow, but you're not telling people to say, hey, I want you to buy from me. I want you to go and, again, buy this product, I want you to buy this service. You're doing it in a way that you're kind of reminding them and it's connected you in some way. And then last but not least is an ask. And that's where we're going to be a little bit more of, hey, did you guys know we do this service? Hey, did you know we have this sale coming up? Hey, did you know that we just came out with this new product that might solve one of your issues? And that's the other thing too, is even when you're asking, the best thing to kind of remember is to necessarily not just come out and blurt, hey, buy this from me, but really know what that product or service it solves and come at it from that way. So obviously, again, if we're using the auto mechanic as an example again, we want to do posts even if we're asking to say, hey, we want to make sure that your car is up and running and potentially save you money long term. Why don't you maybe come in with us and we can do a tune-up for you so that you can get a better ROI longer with your car. Now, again, that's just obviously one example, but you can see that it's not just saying, hey, come purchase this. We're essentially kind of identifying someone's potential problem and trying to solve it with our product or service. That's what a resource is. A resource is someone that's giving me something useful, something entertaining, either, again, with a give, give, ask kind of mentality. The other thing to also understand with social media is that there really are kind of four main benefits or kind of split up values of social media. The first is branding. It gets our name out there, it gets our brand, our logo, and we can kind of have a discoverability factor. People can discover our brand via social media. So we have kind of, again, a branding component. We also have a customer service component. This is a lot of times dealing with, and we actually see this more and more, there are people that are feeling more and more comfortable going to Facebook and asking a customer service type of question, maybe, again, with the message feature most likely, or sometimes commenting as well, instead of potentially calling you or going onto your website. And sometimes they might feel it's more convenient, they might feel more comfortable because a lot of Facebook pages have the same, again, kind of page. A lot of the Twitter pages have the same kind of format. So there is a customer service component that's also into it. There is, again, another component is SEO, search engine optimization. This is going to potentially help you rank better by creating more and more content that's using those different keywords, that's talking about your service and industry. It's going to potentially kind of help you grow that as well. And last but not least, which is honestly what most people go into social media for, but just realizing that it's one of the four components of social media is ultimately sales. Now, obviously, anytime we're doing marketing, we want to be getting sales, but it's important to realize that social media is not necessarily a direct way to kind of get a sale. Whereas, like, for instance, if you run ads on Google, if you even do ads even in the newspaper, those types of things, those are a direct way that you're advertising. You're saying, hey, call me right now, do that. Social media, though, as you have to understand, is a little bit more of a longer term process because we're building relationships with these, again, either followers or potential followers to then have that bring sales. Doesn't mean it's not valuable, doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. You just have to approach it and understand how this is kind of built, because if you have the wrong expectations, you're going to get frustrated and it most likely is going to fail you. And then last but not least, one of the things to kind of keep in mind is to reuse content. So when I talk about reusing content, it doesn't mean, or a lot of times there's a misconception that, for instance, you have to create a very specific, again, custom post for every platform you're on. Again, you can do that if you want, but obviously kind of balancing time and effort and just value out of that, that probably isn't the best way. But here's the point that we're talking about is you can say the same type of message you want and kind of conform it to that platform. Or for instance, if you're just starting on social media and maybe you've written blogs for the past 2 years, start to utilize that content. Maybe you've had a video created, start utilizing that content. The idea is to reuse content and reuse messages, and you can kind of freshen them up even after years. Again, some of that stuff obviously might be outdated and you want to be obviously posting, current information that's useful and being a resource, but some of that information still might be valuable that you created several months, several weeks, several days, or even a couple of years ago. So it just kind of depends. And the idea is, again, work smarter, not harder when we're looking at reusing that content. Now, again, we have to make sure that we're creating our own content, or at least, again, have that be a component of it. Of course, like I was saying before, is you could share an article that talks about your industry. You could share a meme that's related, that's entertaining. Those obviously you might not be creating, but you're aggregating those. But we also want to make sure that we have some of our main content in there as well. The other thing to also kind of understand is, with kind of finding our voice here, is find what social media platform best fits your business. And this might be from a demographic standpoint, which we're going to kind of go through each four of those to give you a better idea of who's on that platform. But also realize that just even because we talk about a platform and the main demographic may not be your, again, your target demographic, doesn't necessarily mean that your main demographic might not be on those platforms. But it is important to understand how brands are represented, how brands, again, look on those platforms, as well as what sometimes the expectation is for content, response times, all of those types of things when we get onto multiple platforms. So that's kind of the purpose of, again, one of the components of this presentation is to hopefully give you some of that information so you can find out what social media platform best fits your business. The other thing to know too, and why we want to make sure we know what fits our business best, is that we don't spread ourselves too thin. One of the biggest mistakes that you can make is, you get all gung ho, we want to do all social media, we jump on 6 platforms and you start posting for the first week and then you get burnt out. And for the next 6 months to a year, nothing's being posted. It's okay to start with 1 or 2 platforms and kind of build from there. Yes, there's, again, it's great if you can be on multiple platforms. Obviously, there's different reasons for that. We'll kind of talk about that. Obviously, there's a lot of different platforms that are all popular. Again, talking about hundreds of millions of, users on them. So there's an opportunity there. But if we don't have the internal resources of time and energy or budget to be able to have that many platforms on there, start with what you're comfortable with. Get your feet wet, and then you can also actually go from there. Other thing to remember too is we want different types of content. You'll kind of hear some of these throughout the presentation, but for instance, I already gave you guys some examples here. Is maybe if it's sharing pictures of, again, your staff, maybe it's, again, you doing a video, maybe it's you doing a poll, maybe you're sharing an article, maybe you've created something on Canva, maybe you've done your own meme or you've shared a meme. I'm just saying that you can kind of see that we just don't want everything to be text. We just don't want everything to be video. We want kind of a mix of different types of content as we're kind of posting. And now some of these will be influenced by the platform you're on, which again, we'll get into, but it is important to kind of realize that we kind of want to make sure we have different types. The other thing too is to get on a schedule and post regularly. Now, these are just some guidelines. Obviously, again, you can start small and kind of grow from there, but at a minimum, you should be trying to post 2 to 3 times a week. Sometimes that surprises people because they're like, well, Ben, I've been posting about 2 to 3 times a month. Well, again, part of the thing, and we'll kind of talk about this, but part of the way to make social media kind of work for you, and especially with some of the algorithms and just the way it kind of works, we need both quality and quantity of content. Now, we need enough content to be kind of in the system to kind of be getting out there so we can have this kind of work for us. That's what we're talking about, kind of these minimum to ideals of, again, of looking to kind of post content from there. And then last but not least is I do recommend if you're going to start to do some of these different platforms, you might want to search for a third-party application that might help you, again, with the posting and the management of this. So these platforms that we've listed there, like when it comes to Hootsuite, Buddy Media, Buffer, Loomly is another one. Really what these platforms allow you to do is you can kind of connect all of your social media accounts to them and then manage them from that dashboard instead of potentially having to go into each specific platform out there. So it can definitely help you when you're looking to, looking at your internal resources of time, energy, and budget of what will potentially kind of work for you. So I do encourage you to kind of look at those if that would be, again, of help to you guys. Some of them have a freemium model, which means you might be able to get a couple platforms for free. But then, again, if you want some of the expanded type of features and things like that, you might have to pay for them, from that. And there's going to be different pricing on all of them. So I encourage you to kind of find out which one maybe you like best, which one kind of fits you. But all of them are essentially going to help you with all the platforms we're going to talk about here today. One other important thing to kind of look at are trends that we're seeing here in 2021 and trying to kind of see how those are going to morph as we go forward too. So one of them is, and you'll kind of see this through some of the or just some of the platforms we're going to talk about today, is understanding some of the generations, kind of their favorite platforms, and again, how to potentially maybe conform some of the message to them if that fits your target demographic. Like just to give you a couple examples. Baby boomers' #1 platform is Facebook. Millennials' #1 platform is Instagram. So if those are our, again, demographics, we probably should make sure that we're at least on that platform because that's where the top or the most favorited with just, demographic and survey studies have kind of shown us of who's on that platform and who's utilizing it the most as well. Another thing to also look at is reuse content meaning, but conform to the platform. This is exactly what I was actually talking about before, is that we can take that, same message, but we can start to conform it to each platform out there. That's what we're kind of talking about here. It's a great strategy because we can get a huge ROI and still create different types of content potentially without having to put in so much extra effort because we're still going after the same message. Another big one is called user generated content. This is essentially using content that was generated by a follower or a user out there. The best example I can give you is, for instance, if you have Google reviews. You might have seen this before, but one, again, kind of idea and a tip is to, for instance, you could create a post and you could go to, your Google My Business account, take a snapshot of maybe one of those new reviews you got, and then actually post that and thank them. And you could turn that into a message or back into the community somehow, or how you've helped this business, this person, whoever obviously your client is. The idea though, is that the user generated that content for you. You're now taking a snapshot of that, and now you're creating a post or a message behind it. And there's a couple other ways that you can do that if people are checking into your establishment, taking pictures, tagging you, hashtags, that you can kind of keep track of some of those things. But again, a really big trend that we're seeing here is looking to utilize content that wasn't even generated by you, but by somebody else. And now we're conforming a message around it. Another other big thing to kind of look at, and I'm sure this has, again, been noticeable, or at least, again, we've, potentially even participated in this, is that users are much more socially conscious and how brands are reacting. And that last part is really kind of what we're seeing a change on, is that, again, obviously a lot of users, because of a lot of stuff that's gone on over the past year, year and a half, a lot of people obviously have become more socially conscious of those different types of issues. But more importantly, I'd say as a business is, we're seeing, because of studies and things like that, that a lot of users are now watching how businesses actually react to that. So obviously you have to decide that for your own business and how and if you're going to react and things like that. But it is important to know that, we have seen kind of a shift with this. And it is important to know that some of the studies that have come out showing that users not only are socially more conscious, but also are looking at brands to see how they react to figure out how that aligns with them. Also, the last two things here is social media influencers. So understanding that this might be a strategy to potentially look at. So an influencer is going to be someone that's most likely in your industry that is either targeting your main demographic or is in your industry and, again, maybe similar to you and kind of creating content. And really an influencer is someone that has a lot of followers that is almost like a mini, celebrity or persona on, again, social media. We've worked with clients, and there's actually been a big trend of potentially identifying some of these for a couple of reasons. You could try to identify some influencers to see if you can either share some of the content, obviously modify some of that content, or get some ideas if they're going after your demographic or industry, see some of the followers that are following them, and maybe you use some of that information for advertising and things like that. But also you may, maybe there's an opportunity to partner with that influencer or something to kind of reach out and kind of look at. We've just seen social media influencers, and really we should be talking about niche social media influencers, ones that are more kind of micro industry. We're not talking Caitlyn Jenner. We're not talking, I'm just saying, like, again, big people that are celebrities out there that have a ton of followers. We're talking about some that may still have a lot of followers, but are very particular to a certain demographic, or specifically, most likely for you guys, for a specific industry that maybe we can get some information on, some demographics, or a partnership. And last but not least is social shopping. So this is very specific, especially to Facebook and Instagram, making sure that if you are selling products, that you actually start a shop on Facebook or Instagram. And then what you can do is you can tag your images with that product. What this allows you to do is, when we talk about give, ask, you can essentially be selling something without selling something or telling somebody. You could, if you're selling, again, cool sunglasses here, you could be just, again, putting them on out in the sun and have kind of a cool comment of, hey, just enjoying the weather. How about you guys? And then you could literally just tag the image with those sunglasses so people can see that that's a product that they can purchase. So this is a huge thing that we've seen really kind of increase here over the past several months, and something that's continued to grow. And really, if you have those products and can tag those, you absolutely should be looking at those. So these are 6 types of trends that we're kind of seeing that I really feel like no matter what your business is, if you're B2B, if you're B2C, if you're product-based, if you're service-based, these are, at least some of these can be applicable to you, and at least to start to kind of get on your radar and potentially start to look at and utilize. Okay, so now starting to kind of go through some of the platforms here. Now, again, there's a lot of information on here, so I'm going to kind of touch on a lot of the big points here. And really, the idea here is to give you an idea of who's on this platform, what content works on this platform, and just really about this platform, so you can decide if this is something that again is going to work for your business. So the first one is Facebook. Now, probably most of us on here have probably a personal Facebook account. Our business may already be on Facebook. It's usually probably one of the best places to start. Again, if you're looking to start on social media, just because it is the most populous social media platform out there. Also, again, a lot of times businesses that we deal with are targeting baby boomers. And as we kind of talked about, it's their number one platform. But important to kind of know is the average user still is approximately 25 to 40, female, newer to technology, and here's the big thing is the 65 plus user growth is really exploding. What we're kind of finding out is that, parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles and things like that, people that maybe weren't really embracing social media 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago are now starting to really kind of gravitate towards Facebook. Most likely is because they've been around the most, they've seen the advertising, they're probably the most familiar with it. But it is important to kind of realize that, and that's having an impact on actually current signups and teenage signups. So we've actually seen the younger demographics, their signups on Facebook actually decrease or plateau, same with kind of newer ones as well. Now, again, some of them are going to different platforms, which we'll talk about here today, but it is important, again, just to realize who's on this platform. Another big thing that Facebook has going for it is the actual amount of time and the percentage of people that use it on a daily basis. So about 2/3 of users on Facebook are using it on a daily basis. And when they're doing it, they're using it on an average of 20 minutes per time. That's a lot of times, and that's a lot of people that are on the platforms every single again, day. Whereas you can see up top here, we have 2.6 billion monthly users. So we at least have 2.6 plus billion people that are using it every month. But now we actually have 2/3 of those people that are using it on a daily basis. So Facebook is also really kind of nice because pretty much any content that you can think of or that maybe you're familiar with, you can be posting. So you could just post text. You could obviously post articles that people can kind of look to find. You can post videos and pictures. We can do questions and polls. We can do updates. We can do events. We can do a lot of these types of things. Again, we can start conversations with groups. The idea is that really it's going to give you the most amount of options for, again, for posting in the different types of content. And really what Facebook is really good at is either starting and engaging with users on the platform and also driving traffic from the platform to your website as well. Obviously, with being able to link from it, having it have live links and stuff like that, it can be super beneficial to be able to kind of drive traffic to your, again, website. Now, some things to kind of note with Facebook is that there is a lot of competition on it. You're not only obviously competing for the, again, from different businesses, but you're also competing with just the general users. And so there has been this thing of, it's really gone into pay to play. And what we're kind of talking about here is if you're just starting out with Facebook, you need to highly consider running some ads to get more followers. Because here's what's happened. One, really Facebook has changed over the past several years. And really we've gone into this system called pay to play. So here's the analogy that or the example that I can kind of show you is right now, if you have 100 followers and you just do a post on your business Facebook page, it's going to go to an average of 4 to 12% of your users. So in this case, if you have 100 followers, it most likely is only going to reach approximately 4 to 12 of your followers. Now, obviously, every post has an opportunity to be, to go viral, to reach more than that. But on average, it most likely, again, is going to be 4 to 12%. Well, it gets really hard building up a following, especially from scratch, or if you only have a couple hundred followers and things like that with it. So you might want to really highly consider running some page promotion ads just to try to get some more exposure with your page so that obviously 4 to 12% of 1,000 is a lot more than 4 to 12% of 100. So it's also just kind of knowing it's kind of a numbers game. And, when we're talking about exposure and who we're trying to come in contact with. So with that, there's actually 2 little tricks here that I kind of want to make sure everyone knows about. is that there is an opportunity that as your personal page, you can actually directly invite people to like your business page. And maybe you guys know about this, but if you don't, and maybe you know about this and you haven't done it, it's something you absolutely should do. So what you would do is you would log in as your personal page. You would find your business page like you would as an average user, probably just type it up in the search bar. So you'd find the Skol Marketing page, for instance. You would go to the community section of your page. Every page has that. And if you scroll down, there's going to be a little button that says invite friends to like your page, essentially. It's going to be a little call to action, a little blue button. When you click on that, you'll actually get a list of all of your friends. Now, if you have 100 friends, you can invite them. If you have, everyone can have up to 5,000 friends. So whatever, the amount of friends that you personally have on your personal Facebook page, you can essentially directly invite them to like your business page. Now, this can only be done once, meaning that every person can only be invited once. And you can approximately, there's no exact science to this, but a lot of studies have shown that approximately you can invite 1,000 friends to like your business page per week. So obviously, if you have 4,000 friends, it's going to probably take you a month to kind of get through that. What happens is it sends them a notification saying, hey, Ben Tice has invited you to like the Skol Marketing page. Literally within the notification, they can hit accept or decline. Most likely, if your friends are seeing this, and that's the other thing too, is sometimes they don't see it, but if they are seeing it, most likely they're going to say yes. So on average, we see about 10 to 20% of people say yes, because a lot of them just don't see it. But you could see that if you have a couple thousand friends, this is a great way to start to help your page just grow more followers just like that. So any admin that's on the page can actually add or, again, request this of different users and their friends. So obviously, if you have 3 people managing and adminning the page, you can have all 3 of them do that to their friends and hopefully exponentially grow your page. Also, there's another feature that per post that you do, if you run ads on it or not, even publicly, just organic posts, you can also invite individual people on there as well to be able to, again, like your page. So on the bottom screen here, you can see a screenshot where someone, really what you do is you would just find that post, or if you are running an ad and maybe boosting that, all the likes and reactions that you're getting, you would click the number right next to that post. You would get a list of all the people that liked that. And you can see this example here that Brian and Alice liked my post, but haven't liked my page. So now I can actually send them an individual invite to actually like that page. So the thing is that this is something that can really help you. The top one is going to be inviting your friends. The bottom one is going to be inviting anybody that likes your content that's not connected to your page. So one thing too is Facebook ads. We're not going to necessarily go really in depth into this. We have a whole other conversation here. The idea though is that especially if you're starting Facebook, you might want to consider doing some ads to try to get some more followers. And as you get your feet wet with just organically posting, this is something you absolutely want to come back towards and look at running some Facebook ads that are going to target and obviously look for some higher, again, conversion. So again, if we're the auto mechanic, maybe we want to advertise that we are running a sale, we can actually kind of do that here. But again, just kind of going back to this is if you're just starting out or you want to get more page likes, I highly encourage running a page promotion ad, which again is just going to pretty much boost out your page more, and you can kind of get some more followers that way. One thing that I encourage you guys also to do, no matter, as you start to get into social media, and this goes for all the platforms, is to make sure you install the pixel that each platform allows. So Twitter has their own pixel, LinkedIn does. Facebook obviously does. What this allows you to do is to be able to track more things once people leave your social media platform and get to your website. This can be super valuable for you just having more analytics and data, but especially as you start to run more ads and as you start to do some of that stuff, you can do some really kind of cool things with setting up some, again, custom audiences and lookalike audiences, which essentially can help, Facebook say, hey, again, let's target the people that did the stuff I wanted them to do on my site that you helped me track. Now, just so you know too, and you guys may have seen this in the news, there is a newer iOS 14 update that allows users to ask they're prompted to essentially on different apps, for instance, like Facebook, to say, hey, would you like Facebook to track you on here? and they can either say yes or no on that. So this is going to impact some, again, tracking. So as you start to use pixels, just know that your iOS 14 users are going to potentially be able to kind of, again, back out of that. It most likely will also have an impact on some other platforms or some other, again, operating systems. Just know that this is so new right now that we don't know exactly how it's going to impact things, but it is important to know that this is out there and you are going to kind of counter this. You're going to see notifications of it. And most likely, if you have, for instance, been running social media or doing social media ads, you might see some of your tracking not being the same. It's just unfortunately the way it is. And I encourage you to kind of stay tuned and stay connected to us, because we're obviously keeping an eye on this and we're trying to obviously kind of see how this is working, doing our own testing, see our own industry experts that we follow, and be able to pass some of that information along to you as well as that comes. But this is very, very new as of just in the past several weeks that this has really started to be on, again, rolled out by iOS. Okay, so moving on to Instagram. So Instagram is one of the fastest growing social media platforms out there. They have approximately over 1 billion monthly users. You can see that the average user is going to be a little bit younger. This is, if you recall from our previous slide, that this is mainly going to be kind of the millennials platform. So the most, again, the highest populated platform for millennials is going to be Instagram. And you can see that it's very much similar to Facebook, that approximately 2/3 of users use Instagram on a daily basis. Now, the big difference between Instagram, which in case you don't know is actually owned by Facebook, is that it's pretty much all visual. So like where I said on Facebook that you can post anything you want, you could just post text, you could post, again, a link and all that kind of stuff. That's great on Facebook. On Instagram, though, it's mainly visual. So every piece of content has to be accompanied by an image or video. Now you can do, again, the live feature, you can do your story feature, but again, there has to be some type of visual content that's associated with it. The biggest thing that you're going to see probably compared to all the other platforms is that if you want to grow on Instagram and you want to have a good strategy there, it has to be revolved around hashtags. So hashtags are a way that we're just going to be able to essentially tag our content with, again, words or keywords that are related to that post. So for instance, if I took a screenshot of me presenting right now and I posted that, I most likely would do something like hashtag social media, hashtag workshop, hashtag small business, things that are related to it. Now, why this is important is this is how a lot of times people can find you on social media, specifically Instagram. And it increases what we like to call our discoverability factor. What this does is there's a lot of people on Instagram that either can search for different hashtags to find posts that are tagged with that same thing because there's an interest there for them, or they can, they're always hyperlinked. So if I see your post and you post something and you have a cool hashtag and I'm like, okay, hey, I want to find more posts like this or more accounts to follow, I can simply click that and Instagram is going to show me more. And then we can also even follow that hashtag and things like that. Why this, again, why this matters to you is utilizing those hashtags, having a hashtag strategy can help you grow your Instagram presence and help you, again, with that discoverability factor. So one little tip that I try to encourage people is every time that you do a Instagram post is to try to have 5 to 10 hashtags on there. It really can help you start to grow that post and then ultimately grow your page as well. So Instagram works really good for products, events, or visual services. Like I said, because it's a very visual platform, you can do static images, you can do carousel, which means just multiple images, like a slideshow, you can do videos. So again, but it's very visual in that. So some of the things to kind of know is that, again, and this is definitely getting better, but again, you may still have some restrictions with some of those third-party applications that we talked about. For honestly, from over the past couple of years, it's really kind of grown, meaning that you could go to Hootsuite and you can actually post to Instagram, like I said, and same thing with Loomly and Buffer and all those other ones. One of the negatives, though, is that there's sometimes some features that you're not able to quite do. But all in all, what's kind of nice is we do have more integrations with them now than we ever did. So, but Instagram is a very, again, phone-based system unless you're using one of those third-party applications, which means you actually can't go to Instagram.com and post, a post. On Facebook, you can go to Facebook.com, you can do it from your app, you can do it, again, on your phone, you can do it from your tablet. Again, on Instagram, you essentially have to go through the app, and a lot of times it's phone-based there. And probably one of the most frustrating things to people, if you're newer to Instagram, is that any links that you put in the content, unlike Facebook or really any other platform we're going to talk about today, do not get hyperlinked. So, again, if I, again, did a post and I said, hey, check out our workshops at skolmarketing.com/workshops, it's just going to show up as text. It's not going to be a hyperlink. So obviously you have to use that within your strategy. That again goes back to sometimes the different types of content. If you're posting a blog, you might have to rethink how you're going to share that on Instagram, because the way that you'd most likely share that on Twitter or Facebook with the link so that someone can click on it and read your blog most likely isn't going to be applicable to the platform. So it's understanding some of those different types of limitations, etiquette, tone that are going to be on these different platforms, especially Instagram here, to be able to kind of, have that fit for your business and have that work the best there. Okay, Twitter. So Twitter has about approximately 325 plus million monthly users. You can see the average user there, 40% of active users are on a mobile device, and that's continuing to grow. Really, Twitter is really good for quippy, kind of short, again, kind of snippets of information. So this can be tips, facts, quotes. We essentially have 280 characters. That's an increase to what it used to be at 140 characters, but still limited more than any other platform out there. So sometimes if we have a long post, we may have to, again, cut it down. We may have to do 2 tweets, but Twitter can be really good for, again, customer service and, again, being able to kind of connect, again, with customers on there. Also, Twitter can be a really good way to just kind of share people's content with retweeting. Or another really good way that I really highly recommend you looking at Twitter is it's a really good way to start to try to follow, again, people that, again, you find interesting and you find potentially valuable in your industry, the industry experts that you look up to. This allows you can essentially make lists in Twitter. So like, for instance, I can make an SEO list and I could put in all the SEO influencers that I follow in there. I could put a social media list together, all the social media ones. So when I'm potentially either just interested in kind of seeing some of those people that we follow, I can aggregate and vet that content and potentially then either create my own content or simply share that content from those influencers that we're following. So Twitter can be a great way for that because the way that they organize it is really good compared to other platforms. Because like I said, you can make really clean lists. You can go into that list. It will pull up all those people that you're following and you put into that list all of their content right there. So this could be a great way if you're struggling with, well, Ben, what do I write? What do I come up with? Think of people that you know in your industry, most likely probably not competitors, of course, but people that you look up to, the people that are related to your industry, the people that you would find valuable information from, that then you could maybe make a list from, and you could start to see what they're posting to give you an idea and potentially either reshare that information or make your own out of it. So Twitter can be, again, a valuable kind of resource there. It's just, of course, just kind of keeping up with, as we're getting to all these platforms, and again, seeing what fits your business. And last but not least is going to be LinkedIn. Now, LinkedIn here is a little unique in a couple different ways. So the thing with LinkedIn is that, for Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, we've been talking about having a business page for each one of those. So we're having a Skol Marketing Twitter account, having a Skol Marketing Instagram account, and having a Skol Marketing Facebook business page. Well, on LinkedIn, here's kind of the unique aspect of this, is that LinkedIn is a very good business-to-business platform. So obviously, if you are a business-to-business platform, a B2B, you absolutely should be utilizing LinkedIn. But what's really kind of interesting about LinkedIn, though, is both platforms, the personal, like Ben Tice LinkedIn account, as well as the Skol Marketing LinkedIn account, are really treated very similarly and are actually trying to accomplish the same thing. Unlike, for instance, if we use Facebook, my Ben Tice Facebook page is more for personal use. Yeah, will I maybe share some stuff on Skol Marketing and things like that? Absolutely, but it's really not the main use of it. And so the thing, though, with of course, LinkedIn, is that the Ben Tice LinkedIn page and the Skol Marketing LinkedIn page are both trying to, begin essentially convey the same message and connect with people more on a business level. That's really the biggest thing with LinkedIn, is it's very business orientated. So I highly encourage you to have both a business, again, like company profile on LinkedIn, but then also a personal, again, business profile that are really, you could be sharing some of the same content, but it's just going to go into the algorithm different and it's going to connect with people differently. And so, again, LinkedIn is a fantastic way to really, again, help you cement yourself as an industry expert, because we can a lot of times talk about higher level types of business things. We can sometimes go further in depth into business types of posts or aspects of our business. We can also join groups. So similar to, like I was saying with Twitter, using it to find other industry experts, you can use the same thing here with LinkedIn groups, especially from a business or an industry specific type of way. So it's just, again, like LinkedIn is super powerful. I'll be honest, obviously Skol Marketing is a business to business organization. This is the #1 platform where we get the most out of from a business perspective and most sales. Doesn't mean that we don't get value out of Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, but being a business to business, again, company out here, you absolutely should be on LinkedIn and absolutely should be utilizing it from, I usually tell people, everybody in like a leadership role or a sales role should have their personal account that's trying to, again, promote or at least, cementing themselves as an industry expert for the company. And then you also have the company business page. And maybe it's posting on your company business page and then sharing that on your personal one. There's some different ways that we can do. Again, what's nice, very similar to Facebook, is pretty much any type of content that you want to do, you can do that. LinkedIn also has really, over the past about year and a half now, kind of adopted hashtags. And hashtags can be beneficial on LinkedIn. Now, you don't want to go crazy. I wouldn't recommend 5 to 10 like we are on Instagram. I maybe recommend, 3 to 4, on a post. But what it does, though, too, is very similar. They kind of stole this feature, so to speak, or copied it from Instagram, where me as a business owner, I could then start to follow different hashtags. Again, why that's beneficial is you can increase your discoverability factor for when you're posting content that is tagged with something that someone's searching, or following, excuse me. So like, for instance, if I did a post and hashtagged it with social media, well, somebody that I don't even know maybe is following that hashtag of social media and then now sees my post, sees my profile, and potentially either connects, follows my business page, et cetera, et cetera. That's what we're talking about here, is you're just growing your reach, you're growing your discoverability factor to not only nurture potential relationships and be top of mind as people are seeing, engaging, but also to discover new relationships that we can start or nurture on social media as well. That's ultimately what we're trying to do here with all the platforms. It's just obviously trying to, again, find the one that's best for us. And here's kind of a newer trick as well that I encourage you guys to take advantage of. If you're looking to increase your business LinkedIn page, very similar to the same concept that has been done on Facebook, where you can actually invite your connections to like your business page. Now, the thing here, though, is this is much more restricted than Facebook is. You only get 100 per month. And like, if you remember with Facebook, it's about 1,000 per week. And so you have to manually kind of go through and click all of these. But it is, it's a total across all admins. That's another big change too. So if you have 4 admins on the page, it's still 100, combined with all you guys. It doesn't mean that each of you get 100. So, but throughout the month, if someone does accept your request, then you get that credit back. So hypothetically, I'll tell you, at the first of every month, I have a Google Calendar invite to remind myself to go through and invite 100 people to like my LinkedIn page. And then throughout the month, I just casually kind of check it, see that, okay, 5 people accepted here, 10 people accepted there, and I get those credits back and I can kind of keep inviting until, of course, the first, when that 100 is kind of replenished. So this is a great way to kind of grow your LinkedIn page. If you aren't familiar with this system, again, it can be just a really good way to kind of get that kind of those followers up. Obviously helps your reputation on the platform, also can help your reach with those different posts as well. This is just kind of a little bit of kind of a scale. It's not to scale, but to kind of give you an idea of when you're starting to think about the platforms and the etiquette, the tone, who's on the platform, how you should maybe apply it. Is my business right for it? Kind of understanding it more from a social and laissez-faire kind of standpoint to more of a business or stricter kind of standpoint. And so you can kind of see that on the opposite scale, we kind of have Snapchat and LinkedIn. And then as we go forward, we have some that are more in the middle when it comes to either Facebook or Pinterest or Instagram, kind of in the middle there. And then we have some that are more social and others like that. This is just something to kind of keep in mind as you're kind of looking at this. Like I said, some of them, they're not exactly to scale, but kind of ranks them kind of accordingly to kind of give you a better idea here. And then last but not least, and I kind of mentioned at the beginning here, but before we open it up for some questions, and I know, just so you guys know, as I have seen some of these questions come in, so I am taking note and we will, get to these in just a couple minutes. But the first thing is just understanding that there is social media advertising. Now, we have a whole other presentation just on that. So if you're interested, I encourage you to check that out. But really what we're talking about here is what we've talked about is building and engaging with your followers and users organically. This is pretty much every social media platform out there has an advertising type of model to it. So it is understanding that we absolutely should build and continue to build our base from an organic standpoint, but there are a lot of situations where it might be beneficial either from a whole page and presence standpoint, meaning to try to get more followers, or a specific product or service standpoint to actually run a very direct conversion heavy ad to these different types of people on those different social media platforms where social media advertising can come into play. Really the biggest difference here that I always kind of like tell people, the big philosophical difference between advertising on Google and advertising on social media is this. Google's going to go after people that are essentially actively looking for you, meaning that if I type in roof repair New Hope, then, again, it's going to trigger an ad if I'm a roofer and then I told, again, Google, anytime someone types that in, I want to show up. So again, someone's actively looking for me. I don't know too much about them. I know maybe where they're located and maybe a little bit of, again, information about them, but really I'm targeting them off of what they're searching for. On social media, you're going after people you think would be interested in your products or services and introducing something to them that they necessarily aren't searching for, but you're doing it from a demographic and behavior standpoint. Because every time you're doing something on social media as a user, the reason it's free is they're kind of tracking that, they're creating an avatar, and they sell it to businesses like us to say, okay, hey, I want to go after someone that is 45, likes dogs, likes sports, and lives in the, again, the Minnesota area. I've got a certain product for them. Again, I'm targeting certain demographics, somebody that I think would be interested in my product or service, and then doing an ad to them. That's the philosophical difference between Google and social media. The other thing too to know is there is a difference between PPC, in case you see this, or boosting or sponsoring. PPC is essentially you're going to pay every time someone clicks or engages with that ad. You're not going to pay for the distribution, you're only going to pay for the actual kind of activity. Whereas boosting or sponsoring is you're just going to pay for the amplification and the distribution of those ads, and whatever comes from there. So there are different models, and different social media sites and accounts and campaigns are sometimes only going to have one or the other. But it is important in case you start to see both of these acronyms or the different words and stuff like that of what those essentially kind of mean. So with that said, I want to thank you guys for tuning in and staying with me here. I do have some questions. If you guys do have some questions there, I encourage you to just, again, put them in the chat, or if you do want to speak it, just still put it in the chat and I'll make sure that you kind of have the chance to ask your question. But I want to go through some of the questions that were asked while the presentation was going on. And like I said, I encourage you guys to, again, put some more in there if you do have one. So the first question is from Lisa, and her question is it a good idea to post social media posts in GMB, which is Google My Business? The answer is yes. There is a platform called Google Posts. It's essentially kind of a quasi social media feature on Google My Business, which is the little red pins on the map. But absolutely, it's a great way to, again, not only have more content be out there, but it's a different way for people to engage with it. Now, a lot of times, usually you're not posting like, your blog posts or articles on, again, Google My Business. You're usually posting things that are a little bit more specific to you. So like, for instance, this is where you can be maybe a little bit more direct and not have to worry so much about the give, ask. This is a lot of times you're kind of promoting yourself because it's connected to your Google My Business account. So for instance, if you have events coming up, sales, you want to highlight products, you have COVID-19 regulations. That was a big one over the past year and a half. Again, things like that. So the short answer is yes. I would encourage you to post on, again, Google My Business, but you're going to do it a little bit different way. And honestly, frequency wise, usually 1 to 2 a week is usually sufficient. You don't have to do as much as some of the other platforms. And then I have another question from Laura, who said that she had been told that asking personal friends to like your business page can confuse the Facebook algorithm because your personal friends may not necessarily be your ideal clients or ideally interested in your content on it. So there is some truth to that, but the idea here though is we're using this as a way to springboard who is actually connected to your page, and then ultimately it's going to be off of engagements. So, again, you are partly correct there, Laura, that there is something kind of with that. But if we're looking at the value that it gets us to springboard our page to get to our main clientele and also to start to help our distribution of the content, I would honestly say that it's still worth it from that perspective. And the other thing too is we're only being able to ask somebody once. This would be something that if you were to able to ask them over and over again, like honestly, it'd be nice to have 5,000 likes if you had 5,000, again, followers. But you are right, there is something there that you probably want all 5,000 of them there. But this is also why the pixel there, again, is really important, because it's not so much who's following your page, it's who's engaging and then converting on your page. That's more or less where a lot of the algorithm comes into play, because that's what we want to communicate to Facebook is who's actually engaging and doing the things that we want. Those are the people that Facebook really cares about. So again, like that's where I think it's kind of the best of both worlds, because all of us, when we go to a Facebook page, let's be honest, if they have, 26 likes, there's kind of that thing in the back of our mind going, like, okay, is this really a business? Where are they at? Are they established? But if we look at something and they've got 1,426 likes, there's a little bit of different, again, thing that kind of happens when we're viewing that. So to kind of help you with that, and again, to springboard it, I do recommend looking at still kind of, having people like that, but then still, of course, engaging and putting out content that is going to be for your main demographic. Perfect. So I just had a question that just came in from Miranda. So for educational institutions that want to advertise new courses, what would be beneficial platform to use to attract new candidates? So when we're talking about candidates, if you're talking about people to attend your course, one of the, honestly, probably one of the biggest ones and best ones that's going to give you the most flexibility is probably going to be Facebook. And I'd probably say followed by LinkedIn. Also, it kind of does depend when you're saying educational institutions, it kind of does depend on a little bit on your, your demographic. But I will say that Facebook and LinkedIn will give you a little bit more kind of flexibility and distribution for the way that we're able to kind of convey those. That doesn't mean that you can't still, promote that on Instagram. You still can't promote that on Twitter, but just even case studies and just what we've seen with algorithms, I think your best bet is for sure going to be Facebook and LinkedIn when it comes to this particular example. So hopefully that answered your question. So, well, awesome. Well, if you guys have any other questions, please put them in. I'm just going to kind of just do my wrap up here and just kind of thank you. But if you do have any other questions, please, I'll try and get to them here. But also, if you guys are watching this later, or you guys have a question that pops in your mind, please know that this is why I put my contact information here. Feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy just to answer questions. I also encourage you to take advantage that we do free consultations. This isn't a sales pitch. If you want to talk about our services, awesome. I just know, as you can kind of see, there's a lot of information. Some may be applicable to you. Some you might have some questions. You just need a little bit more help. And that's how we kind of give back to the community. We not only do these, but we also do free consultations that maybe you need to ask, or maybe you want us to check to say, hey, Ben, is my Facebook platform set up correctly? Hey, I've got a question on Twitter. Can you help me this specifically about my business? So if you have some of those or want to take advantage of that, I highly encourage you to do that. All you have to do is reach out to us and say, hey, Ben, I'd love to get together, talk with you, take you up on one of those consultations, got some questions. We can do that. Of course, if you have questions about our services, please let me know. We can talk about those separately. But these, again, consultations are really meant kind of just to kind of help you with some of those questions and kind of help you a little bit further down the path and take some of this information and conform it to you. I also encourage you guys to check out our other workshops. You can see our full workshop schedule of our live workshops at skolmarketing.com/workshops. Also encourage you to check out our YouTube channel. A lot of the different workshops that we do and all the topics, at least, that we've done have at least one workshop that's been recorded for you in the past year that you can actually see and view at any time. So I encourage you to check and follow our YouTube channel. We're constantly kind of coming up with more content and more videos. I encourage you to do that. So with that, I want to say thank you guys for tuning in. Again, like I said, if you guys have any further questions, please reach out. But I just want to thank you guys for tuning in. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys took away something. You guys have a great day, and Skol.